If I wanted to get pregnant in 2026, not 10 years ago, but right now, with everything we know about fertility, nervous system regulation, hormonal health, and the emotional toll that is trying to conceive, then this is exactly what I would do. Because the truth is, the most of us start out our fertility journey assuming that things will work out. But when you realize that things aren't going to be so easy, there is so much more that you need to consider. It's your nervous system, it's your lifestyle, it's your beliefs, it's your relationship with control and stress and perfectionism and your own body. So today I want to walk you through the physical, emotional, and energetic steps that I would personally take if I was trying to conceive this year, in a way that supports my hormones, protects my mental health, and a way that actually makes this journey feel more manageable. Welcome to your journey to fertility. This is the podcast that blends science with spirit to give you all the tools you need as you navigate your fertility journey. I'm your host, Jennifer Edmonds, and for the last 15 years, I've been helping women on their journeys to motherhood and beyond. I believe that combining the latest scientific research along with the best energetic and mindset practices will help you to avoid putting your life on hold and bring you closer to your baby. Each week, you'll learn ways to support your fertility and trust your body so that you can stop stressing that you'll never have your baby and finally walk your path to motherhood. This is the Your Journey to Fertility podcast. Hello and welcome back to the podcast. Thank you so much for being here with me today and pressing play and sharing your time and your energy. Now, this episode is the first in a 3-part series. The other 2 episodes will be dropping later this month. And these episodes are all around what I would do if I was wanting to conceive personally in 2026. And before we jump in, and especially if you are a new listener to the podcast, these episodes are not designed to give you more to think about or to add more to your plate or to think that you have to do more or be more perfect or anything like that. They're not about telling you what you're doing wrong. And like I said, if you are a new listener, that is not the vibe of this podcast. So I really hate, especially on social media, you see those posts that say things like, here are 10 things that you're doing to harm egg quality. And it's always about blame and fear. Anyway, so these episodes are not designed like that at all. These are more about taking some very simple practices and allowing them into your life to make your life feel easier in this whole process of trying to conceive. Because as a type A overachiever who likes things to be perfect, and I struggle with this still to this day, I needed to know that I was doing everything right in order to get to where I wanted to be, to have the baby, to get the pregnancy. And I don't think that got me anywhere. And I can tell you, as I often do on this podcast, this idea of controlling your way through something or overthinking, it doesn't get you to where you want to go. So let's get straight into it. I have started off this episode by listing out 7 things that I would absolutely focus on if I was trying to conceive this year. So number 1, this is so big for me, and I'm sure you can relate to this. I would stop trying to do everything at once. This is one of those things that sounds really, really simple, but in practice, it really is very far from easy. And especially when you do fall into maybe that category like me, where you do think that more is more, and the more perfectly I do this, the better result that I'm going to get at the end of it. But we do fall into this perfectionism trap, this idea of if I'm perfect, I will get the perfect result. And I'm sure that anyone who's been on this journey for a long period of time will tell you that, unfortunately, that just isn't the way it works. Yes, there are things that we can do to support our overall health and our hormones and our fertility along the way, but being perfect at every moment of every day doesn't actually get you to the result that you want. I think that overwhelm and this idea of, well, if I do something wrong, that's it. I've ruined my fertility journey for this whole month. It's just been a complete waste of time. That is such a dysregulating way to look at our journeys, and it creates more stress, more anxiety, and you end up in this vicious cycle. Well, if I'm going to be perfect, it means I can't even stress, not even for a moment. I think that we also jump into this idea of, well, more supplements and more appointments and being more perfect is going to equal a better outcome. And as we soon figure out, that actually doesn't happen at all. But there is a fine line, I think, between supporting your fertility and not letting your whole life be dictated by it. But where is that fine line? And it is a very, very tricky one to balance between. The only way you can really start to answer this is by asking yourself, what are all the things that I am doing right now in my life to support my fertility journey? And how do they make me feel? And some of them might make you feel really good. I know if I've had a weekend away and I have been eating a lot of junk food or things that I wouldn't normally eat, I don't feel great at the end of the weekend. I genuinely feel better, as I'm sure we all do, if we are focusing on more nourishing nutrition and making more meals at home and simple things like that. But if I think back to the midst of my own fertility journey when I was taking the 19 different supplements every day, and that wasn't just 19 pills, that was 19 different supplements. I think it was like 30 different tablets all up. It was just ridiculous. And this idea of, well, every single meal has to be perfect. I can't even eat out without knowing what oils they've cooked things in. This obsession with controlling every tiny little part of your life, does that actually make you feel good? And instead, I think if we can move away from, instead of doing everything perfectly, what are the biggest needle movers here? What are the things that really work for you? And for me, that was things like sleep. Obviously, we all know the benefits and the value of sleep, but prioritizing that. Things like getting regular exercise. Is that something that's going to really impact your life and make you feel good? Is it taking a few targeted supplements because perhaps you've got deficiencies or you've noticed an improvement in lab results? So those sorts of things that you should be taking are really going to have a big benefit. So really take stock, and if it helps you, write out everything that you are doing to support your fertility, cancelling plans, going to all these appointments, not going to restaurants because you're so worried about the ingredients in the food, and then all the supplements, all the appointments that you're going to. I mean, when you write it all down and you see it in front of you, it is overwhelming. And think about that as, well, I can go through this less now and I can perhaps take out a few things. And they don't have to be things that I take out permanently, but maybe just for today. Maybe I don't need to go to that third acupuncture appointment this week. What I want you to really think with this is you don't have to do it all the time. There might be some days where you do feel really good about doing the meal plans and taking all of the things. And then other days you've had a sleep in and your sleep schedule has been a bit out of whack, and not beating yourself up for things that aren't perfect every step of the way. Number 2, and this should probably be number 1, and I feel like it's the first thing I talk about on every podcast episode. We're going to keep talking about it because it is so important. I would start with regulating my nervous system. And this is just everything. Your nervous system creates your entire experience in the world, from the way you perceive others to the way that you feel, the way you react, the way that you live your life, and the way that you show up. Chronic stress and high cortisol or stress hormone levels, they can over time disrupt your overall health and your fertility. And a lot of those hormones, that very delicate balance and dance that our reproductive hormones have to go through each month in order to ovulate and then support a successful pregnancy. Chronic stress over a long period of time can interrupt a lot of that. And this is something that I talk about all the time because it's not something that we're taught. It's not something that doctors are asking you. I don't know how many doctors said to me, well, what are your stress levels like? How are you sleeping? How's your relationship? Are you able to get through your day without bursting into tears over really tiny things? And I don't know of many doctors through all the conversations that I've had with my students who are asking people this as well. So if it isn't being brought to our attention and we're not being taught how to help ourselves out of dysregulation, where are we going to learn it? So this is something that I am so passionate about and will keep talking about as much as I need to. Coming out of this fight or flight response, before expecting your body to become pregnant, I really believe is going to set you up for a better pregnancy experience and then that experience of new parenthood as well. And there are so many ways that we can do this. And I talk about this all the time, this idea of your toolbox and knowing what works for you, prioritizing the things in your life that make you feel calm and in control. So for me, it was things like gentle movement. Finding that fertility practice, that fertility yoga practice was incredibly beneficial for me. Getting outside, moving your body, seeing sunlight, breath work, and all of these tools that we added, tapping and humming and all of these beautiful modalities that are coming more and more out into the open these days. Being able to regulate your day before you do anything else is a wonderful way to set yourself up for whatever happens in the day that's coming up. So if you can start your day not by grabbing your phone, scrolling through your emails, being triggered by something you see on social media, but instead grounding your feet on the floor, placing a hand over your heart, a hand over your belly, and just coming into your breath, this is going to set yourself up for a much more regulated day ahead. And remember, the goal is not to avoid stress. And as humans who live in a modern world, and on top of that, you throw in your journey of trying to conceive, avoiding stress is impossible. So it isn't about, well, I'm going to do whatever I can to not get triggered and not get stressed out today. No, it is about when these things happen, what is my reaction? What is my response? And how can I come back to that state of feeling more regulated and in control more easily? And that is easier said than done. And throughout this podcast, if you are a new listener, I have so many episodes that really walk you through ways that we can do this and ways to help you feel more in control on your own journey. Number 3, I would focus on consistency over intensity. And this really relates back to the first point where I said you don't want to do all the things all of the time. We get burnt out from this trying to conceive behavior of all or nothing. It kind of creeps up on you, doesn't it? It's not like one day you wake up and you're like, okay, well, now I start the supplement protocol and now I do all the appointments and now I read all the forums and I go deep dive on social media and trying to find out every symptom that could possibly have an outcome that isn't favorable. Just that little by little, your days start to be taken over by this journey, I find. It's the late night Googling and asking ChatGPT for all of the answers and coming up with these very strict routines. But instead, what we want are things that are sustainable. And we don't know how long this journey is going to take. Sadly, we don't have a crystal ball. It would be amazing if we did. But if you could say to yourself, all right, I'm going to do all the things and I'm going to do them perfectly because next month I'm going to be pregnant, you could probably manage that. You could maintain that. But if you didn't know that it was going to take 6 months, 12 months, 2 years until you were pregnant, how burnt out and overwhelmed would you be with this idea of having to be perfect all of that time? And it is the not knowing, I think, that really throws us because we think, gosh, I'm going to do all of this and it's going to be for nothing. So where does it end? And it's expensive and it's time consuming and it makes your life miserable. I think this idea of the 80-20 rule, and I find this is sort of talked about a lot when people are talking about health kicks and weight loss and all those sorts of things as well. But what can you do 80% of the time? And could you do this for the next 6 to 12 months? And if the answer is yes, then I think that is sustainable. And 80% means you are not having to be perfect and you really are giving yourself permission. You can eat the cheesecake. You can go and have pizza with your friends on the weekend. You can have that occasional glass of wine or gin and tonic or whatever it is and not beat yourself up. So ask yourself, can I do this 80% of the time for the next 6 to 12 months? And if that feels sustainable, then I think that is a good direction to take. Number 4, I would support my hormones in simple ways. And no biohacking weird social media shit required. I am not into cold plunges. I'm not into all of these expensive devices and tools that are meant to regulate your nervous system. I think that we have all of the tools already and we just need to learn what they are. So there are very simple things that I think really do have a flow-on effect to this idea of overall health is more important than just looking at it from a fertility perspective. So balancing blood sugar. This is a bigger conversation on obviously something that is very person dependent, but this idea of being able to balance your blood sugar levels, even if you are not one of those people who tends towards insulin resistance or finds that this is something that they struggle with, it just makes you feel better and more in control throughout your day. So eating regularly, nourishing yourself, not having 3 black coffees on an empty stomach first thing in the morning, eating enough protein, avoiding sugar on an empty stomach as well. I find these things, when you get to that point where you feel really jittery and you can't sit still, that is a sign of blood sugar levels being out of whack and dysregulated. Focusing on sleep. And the one thing that helps me more than anything is going to sleep at the same time every night. You can't always control what is going to wake you up during the night or how well you're going to sleep, but you really can control your sleep routine most of the time and what time you go to bed. So focusing on these, again, small things that are going to help your hormones overall. Light exposure at the very end of the day and the very start of the day. Again, this is one of these regulating tools that we don't really think about and we definitely take for granted. But before we had access to artificial light, many hundreds of years ago, especially well before we had phones in our faces first thing in the morning and last thing at night, your circadian rhythms and your life was really dictated by the sun. And that would change at different times of the year, of course. But we are not designed to have bright light shone into our eyes well into the evening. So at least an hour before bed, I always try to tell my students to get into the habit of phones away, laptop away, TV off, dim the lights. If you want to go down the whole get red light globes and put them into all of your lights, you've got red light on, you can do that. I don't do that. Again, it's a little bit much. But if that's something you find comforting, go for it. But just providing this space and this time for your body to start winding down. And it helps your brain to start producing melatonin, which is your sleep hormone. Same thing when you wake up. We should be allowing our brains and our eyes to receive natural light before artificial light, if that is possible. And I know, depending on where you live in the world and what time of year it is and what time you have to get up in the morning, that is not always possible. But this idea of needing our phones the second we get out of bed is really disruptive to our hormones. So if you can, again, if you use your phone for your alarm, great, turn off the alarm, put your phone down and don't come back to it until you've gotten that natural light and you've woken up a little bit more naturally. This idea of reducing endocrine disruptors, I think, is one we can really go down a big rabbit hole on. And I know there are a lot of people who specialize in this, and I have actually had some experts on the podcast before to speak about this idea of endocrine disrupting chemicals. But there are little ways that we can switch out perhaps some of the things that we use in our home without it becoming super overwhelming. So every time you use another plastic container, perhaps say, do you know what, this might be the last time I use this and then we're going to toss it. Or next time you go to the supermarket and you need to buy laundry detergent or cleanser or shampoo, maybe let's swap it out for a non-toxic option. And I find now I did all of this and I did the crazy version when I was trying to conceive. I threw out everything and overhauled my entire life all at once, which I don't recommend doing. But over time, I do notice now if I borrow some clothing from someone or I'm in someone else's house and, I borrow their washing machine if I'm away for a few days, the smell of these chemicals gives me such a headache now. And I think that if we are immune to that, we're so used to it that we don't even notice what an impact some of these things are having on us. That can become a little bit tricky as well. So food for thought, without overhauling your entire life, switching out some of these things and then just noticing how they feel. Because the biggest thing here with all of these, whether you want to take my tips or not, it is about how they make you feel personally and tuning into your body and knowing whether they are right for you. So other things that I want you to just have a little think about in terms of disrupting your hormones here. How does it feel when you scroll your phone until you pass out because you're so exhausted? Do you feel good from that? Do you wake up thinking, oh yes, it's a really good way to fall asleep? Or if you were to put that phone away an hour before bed, have a cup of tea, read a book, talk to your partner, whatever it is, do some breath work, some meditation. How do you feel if you go to sleep after doing that instead? Do you notice that your cycle, your menstrual cycle, is actually more predictable or easier to manage when you avoid things like perfumes and scented deodorants and candles? So, like I said, without going crazy, just finding these manageable ways to change some of the things within our life that have an impact. So, number 5 is I would protect my mental health early. I feel like this gets really pushed to the end, doesn't it? It's like, well, I've got to get the testing done. I've got to get the diagnosis. I've got to get the right doctor. This idea of supporting your mental and emotional health really comes last. And I wish I had really addressed this a lot sooner on my own journey. I would set boundaries really early on with things like baby showers, invitations to 1-year-olds' birthday parties, social media, and I find we all tend to end up in this stage in our life where we're trying to conceive at the same time a lot of our friends are. And lo and behold, it's easy for so many people, and that is so triggering. So you can gently mute people. You don't have to delete them or block them or do anything dramatic, but you don't have to have their content in your face all of the time. Protecting your heart when it comes to pregnancy announcements as well. I know it's hard if you are face-to-face with someone not to react in the moment, and there's nothing wrong with that. Allow your emotions to be there. But if someone does give you that news and you've got some time to go and process it on your own, be gentle with yourself and know that your reaction isn't wrong. There's nothing that you're doing wrong if you feel guilty and jealous and these bad thoughts come up, and you wouldn't wish any harm on anyone, I know, but sometimes these thoughts, these dark places that your brain takes you to, they do come up, and I don't want you to feel guilty or to beat yourself up about that. Really being mindful about the way we respond to people with advice, this intrusive advice that people like to give us, and it comes from everywhere. It comes from family, colleagues, randoms on the internet, but at what point do you I always have to catch myself. I'm not one of those people that kind of get stuck into the comments of people's social media posts. I always find it funny when people are arguing back and forth. I'm like, who has the time or the energy? But it can be easy to get into that rabbit hole. And there's no end point here. If we get stuck into these angry conversations with people who just don't get it, and you can choose in the moment, this is hard, whether to educate someone and say, I don't want to talk about that, I'm finding this really difficult, or that was actually really hurtful. It would be better if you phrase this a different way. If you are willing to do that and to educate that person in the moment, amazing. But if you also want to just shut it down and say, change the subject, or you want to just laugh it off. Sometimes we hate ourselves for it, sometimes later on, but if you need to laugh it off in the moment just to be able to move on with your day, there is nothing wrong with that. But just being really aware of if someone is going to give you advice, how am I going to react to that? And it might change from one situation to the next, but just being very clear with yourself and how you would want to show up in that particular situation. I would find my team or my support people as early as possible. It is never too late to do this, by the way. But instead of looking for information on every corner of the internet and watching endless YouTube videos, and there's nothing wrong with that, but really finding people that you can trust. So a doctor you can trust, and whether that's I need to go and get a second, third, fourth opinion to find that person, if that is available to you, do it. Finding the people around you, maybe it's a holistic practitioner, someone who comes at it from a different approach, still supports the medical aspect of things, which of course so many of us need, but then just knowing that you've got a different perspective to turn to. Maybe it is someone like a therapist or a psychologist, or just having people around you who you can go and vent to, and they're not going to say the wrong thing, they're not going to trigger you. But getting your people around you as soon as you can is so, so valuable. Trying to conceive is not just a physical journey, by no means at all. It is so much more of an emotional and a mental marathon. So number 6 is I would work on my limiting beliefs. And I can do a whole podcast episode just on this, and I'm pretty sure I have. Or if I haven't done one, we'll do a deep dive on this in the near future. But these limiting beliefs, I think, there are some people that say they are the blocks to getting pregnant. I don't think it's fair to say that to someone, but what I always come back to is these things that we tell ourselves constantly over and over again, they do have an impact on how we feel, and they make our lives miserable if we're not careful and we don't catch them. So I think that addressing them, yes, maybe it will help you get pregnant, but it makes you feel more capable and more in control on this journey, which is going just to make your life feel easier as well. So moving from these things that we tell ourselves, like, my body is broken, I'm left behind, I'm the last one in the whole world who is still on this journey, it's never going to happen for me. All these things that we constantly tell ourselves. And being able to reframe some of them and move into this idea of trust and trusting your body. And this idea of it being a partnership, it's not you telling your body what to do every month, but really tuning in and listening to what your body needs. I think that our bodies are all day long giving us signs and signals for what's going on and what they might need more support with. And this idea of emotional safety, being able to trust that what you feel and what comes up for you is valid, being able to acknowledge and own those emotions, and then being able to say, well, they're not going to control my entire day. I'm going to be able to bring myself back to that place of safety and regulation when we can. But how do we actually do this? And isn't that like the hugest question and the hardest thing to do? Like most things, it comes back to awareness and being able to catch yourself in the moment. This is really hard to do initially, but I find whenever I'm going through something now and I'm having a difficult time, it does become easier the more we do it. So catch yourself. If you're being triggered by something that you've seen during a day and you get those thoughts that are coming up, put a hand on your heart, maybe put another hand on your lower belly. Remind yourself first that you are safe, because when you are triggered, as we know, it is your nervous system having a response to something that you deem is a threat. So your brain and your nervous system says, well, there's something about this situation that is unsafe. And we know that our poor brains don't know the difference between this isn't life-threatening, this is just someone who's pregnant that I'm being triggered by. So we need to remind our bodies, first of all, that we are safe. And being able to do this, it's not easy and it's not fun and it takes work, but it is valuable. It might really help you to journal it out, to write it down, write out things that have triggered you, write out all the worst case scenarios, all of those deep, dark thoughts that you have, those things that you don't even want to consider are a possibility. There is something very healing about getting them out of your head and getting them onto a page. Because when we can look at those things from a different perspective, when your brain can look at those and say, okay, we don't want this to happen. This is the worst case scenario, but we've written it out. We've actually said it out loud. Oh, but we're okay. We survived. We didn't die. Everything is actually okay. It just loses its grip and its hold over you. And over time, the more we do this, the more that we address these things that are coming up rather than pushing them away, the easier they become to work through. Now, the last thing that I want to mention as we start to wrap this episode up, number 7, is I would get support sooner rather than later, and sooner than I think I needed it. And support really can look very different for a lot of people. So some of us really need talk therapy. We need to go and see the counsellor, and that is incredibly valuable. Some clinics do offer an in-house counsellor. I would just be very, very careful about working someone who isn't familiar with the fertility process, and you would think that someone within a clinic actually would be, but sadly that isn't always the case. I think it's very important to know that that person understands the language around the process of IVF in particular, and to know these little things that are a very big deal. So be very careful if you need a therapist in choosing the right one. And I do have recommendations. If you do need someone, please reach out to me. But it's not even this idea of needing that just emotional or mental health support, but this idea of having to wait 12 months before you go and get things tested or get a diagnosis. And I know in a lot of countries, especially where it's government funded, you do need these timelines to have passed before they will do that. But if you feel in your gut that something isn't right, if you have a very difficult menstrual cycle, very painful periods, you find that like ovulation is very irregular, or you just have an inkling, it is 100% within your right to go and get the testing or the questions answered when you want them. And you don't need to be told by anyone that you're crazy or that you need to wait longer or you're young, don't worry about it. No. If you think that something isn't right, that is a signal that your body is trying to tell you something. So go and get those things looked at. Finding your community sooner rather than later is priceless. Oh my goodness. I don't think that I told a single person, apart from my husband, that I was considering IVF before we actually started the journey. And then by the time I got to my third round of IVF, I was telling everyone. But when you are heard by people who understand, who can empathize with what you've been going through, it takes such a huge load off your heart. It really does. And just being able to speak the words to someone who knows what it feels like is powerful. So finding your own community, and whether you want to do that through someone who offers coaching and a guided process to do that, I include this element of community in all of my programs because I see how incredibly valuable it is. I have people that come into my programs and they say, this is the first time I've actually been able to talk to someone who understands what I'm going through, who isn't a medical doctor and, isn't anyone who's based in the medical side of things. It's just so nice to have a real conversation with someone about it. So don't overlook that and do it sooner rather than later as well. And you want this regulated guidance around advice rather than this panic-driven idea of like, I've got to Google all my symptoms, I've got to get the answers from AI. And it's totally fine to ask the questions. And I think some of these AI tools are very advanced these days, and it is good just to be able to raise the questions. But when you're looking to these tools for diagnoses and to know what to do next, that's where we really need to take a little step back and say, okay, do I need guidance from a more qualified professional rather than just these AI tools that we're now finding access to on the internet? So get the community, get the support that you need, go and get the testing done, get second opinions if you want it, and find someone who can give you real advice rather than you just hoping for the best through an internet search as well. So I hope that these things have been valuable for you. Now, if you feel like you were just lost and you need just a little bit of guidance along the way, especially in terms of where do I even start with looking after my own emotional health or to start regulating my nervous system? I do have a lot of free resources available, and especially I have a free fertility yoga guide. So if you would like to get access to that, the link is in the show notes. That is something that's going to take you through each phase of your cycle and give you tools to work through at each step. There's lots of yoga, there's meditation, there's breath work, and it's a wonderful way to start using some of these regulating tools that I chat about so much on this podcast. I want to remind you that wherever you are on your fertility journey right now, you don't have to do this perfectly in order for things to work. We all know someone who didn't eat well or, got McDonald's for dinner every night and they fell pregnant easily, or the person that smoked or whatever it might be. Just know that, yes, you might need a little bit more support than others, but you still don't have to be perfect in order to get pregnant. You are allowed to move through this journey slowly and gently and in a way that actually supports you and your nervous system along the way. I don't think our bodies are asking us to try harder as we go through this as well. Often I think really what your body is asking for is to feel safer. And every small step you take towards supporting yourself in that way really, really does matter. You don't need to overhaul your entire life this week. Even choosing just one thing from this list today to explore is more than enough. So if you found that this has been helpful for you, I would love it if you could share it with someone, because we never know who might be struggling as well. And someone might listen to this and think, oh my gosh, there is someone else who kind of gets me and who's been on this journey before me as well. If you could leave a quick written review or a comment, depending on where you are listening or watching to this, that would mean the world to me. And ask me questions, send your feedback. I love hearing from you, honestly. You can DM me, you can voice note me on Instagram, you can email me anytime that you want. Now, next week on the podcast, we're going to be continuing this series as I break down in part 2 the 6 things that I would stop doing if I was trying to conceive in 2026. So I can't wait to get into all of that with you next week. But until then, I am sending you all of my wishes as you continue your own journey to fertility. The most common thing I hear from students who are on their fertility journey is that the stress of trying to conceive has taken over their life. Your days end up being filled with endless appointments, navigating pregnancy announcements. You're trying to eat right, take all your supplements, and it is all you think about from the moment you wake up. I designed the Element Fertility Yoga course to support your body, your mind, and your mental health in 3 important ways: to synchronize your hormones, increase circulation and blood flow, and to help regulate your nervous system. But on top of this, the greatest gift that you can give yourself throughout this journey is a sense of peace, to help you calm your mind and just make this process feel easier. Every single one of my students tell me that this is the first thing they notice after starting a yoga, meditation, and breathwork practice. But on top of this, you have the amazing benefit of actually supporting and increasing your fertility. Studies have shown that those participating in mind-body programs as they're trying to conceive have success rates 3 times greater than those who don't. The course I've designed walks you through natural conception as well as fertility treatments and IVF cycles. And the best part is you can work through it at your own pace in the comfort of your home. The practices start from just 10 minutes per day. To learn more, visit elementpilatesyoga.com or see the link in the show notes.